Hey Chris, long time no see. It's been a while since you've been on one of the lives. My previous live chat just disappeared. I started doing a live a few minutes ago and it just seems to have disappeared. So I've started a new one. I hope guys aren't just sitting there talking to thin air. Can you see another live session still on the screen, Chris? Can you see two lives showing live at the moment? Okay, so hopefully they'll realise. Thank you. How you been? I do enjoy seeing your pictures every day. You're about as prolific as me when it comes to the daily pictures. Probably more prolific, in fact. Currently smoking my little, don't know what you call this, but some Orlik golden sliced, very tasty. Yeah, I mean, this was a pipe that I kind of had problems with. I made this a while back, and it had some major issues, and I ended up taking it off the lathe when I shouldn't have, and then I found it almost impossible to realign it, and I kind of worked hard to save a pipe out of it, and I've become quite attached to it because of that. So it's a good smoker. It's a nice little short stubby little pipe. I take it out with me quite often. It's a good pocket pipe. And it smokes very, very well. It's got nice grain. So yeah, nice pipe. I did a bit of a restoration last night on a Les wood pipe. Finished after London Calling. I finished polishing it up, and it turned out really, really nice. It had a little bit of it was a bit worn on the front edge here, presumably to where the previous owner had been lighting it. So I just gave it a little bit of a rounded edge all the way around, and it looks wonderful now. Polished it up, of course, cleaned it. I sanded it all the way back to the briar, and I restained it. So the staining is faithful to the original stain, but it's a bit brighter, a little bit fresher, a little bit punchier, a little bit more sort of a golden colour to it. Beforehand it was brown, so it's a bit more chestnutty now, and it just looks a bit fresher. Hi Geek Piper. Lutrasaurus, it's been a while, how are you? I haven't decided yet, Chris. I don't know, because originally I was going to keep the bent one, but this one has come out so well. I haven't really made up my mind. I'm going to give this one a bowl coating, just to give it a clean, fresh start. So I'm probably going to do that today as well, and then I'll probably have a good look at the other pipe. The other pipe came in much. I mean, this was in the same good, almost perfect condition, except for that issue, which is now resolved. The rest of the pipe is absolutely fine. You can see it's in really lovely condition. The silver work is great. The other one also perfect condition except for some little dings on the top, very, very slight dings, which I think must be from the guy's ring or something like that every time he lit the pipe. But other than that, it's in perfect condition. But I don't really know is the short answer. At this stage I haven't made up my mind yet, because I've really struggled to find these army mount in 9mm of leswoods. I've had a whole bunch of leswood pipes, as you've seen in the past probably, and I've had some 9mm ones as well, and some with silver, but not the silver spigot, and so it's kind of been a bit of a grail for me. So I don't know. I don't know. I haven't decided yet. These are actually Elwoods. There are two makes that he has, Elwood and Ferndown. The Elwoods tended to be for the German market, for the filtered market, and the Ferndowns tended to be for the rest of the world, for the American market. I'm smoking Orlik Golden Sliced. A really nice morning smoke. Les and Dolly Wood, yeah. I was actually in touch with him yesterday because I've been meaning to go and visit him, but he's just told me yesterday that he's kind of fully retired. He was thinking about, they recently moved, and he was thinking about setting up a little bit of a workshop, you know, in his retirement, you know, just to work at a slow pace. But I think that they've decided to travel the world, or travel to places which they've always wanted to go to in their dotage. I think his wife is not as well as she could be. I think that's part of it as well. Salami mango, I've never tried that. What's it like? No worries, Chris, all the best. Oh right, that's alright. A light aromatic, well, that's my kind of thing, a light aromatic. Orlik Golden Sliced is also light aromatic. It's a bit of a push to call it an aromatic, but it's got a light, some kind of light, zesty topping on there. The wind is picking up here. So I hope everybody's having a nice weekend so far. I didn't really get on to have any specific kind of chat. I just thought, I'm in here, I'm in the workshop. While I'm working, I'll chat if anybody's interested in chatting. Hey Guy, how you doing? Shalom, shalom. So at the moment I'm thinking of doing a counted poker. Hey, Smoking Fireman, how you doing? How's Jerusalem weather today, Guy? Back to the drawing board. Didn't like that shape. No rain. Okay, makes a change. Well, we've got stormy weather. Very, very windy at the moment. You have corona in Israel now? That's not good. Well, it's. I thought it was dying down, but I think it's really just because the press aren't talking about it as much. But it seems to be spreading. Italy is just sort of closing down a lot of its regions. They've had a couple of deaths there in Italy. The live stream is stuck a little bit. I'm really sorry. It's the weather, I think, is having an effect on the signal. Hi Pipeman. I've never actually bought the tins of Northwoods. I've always bought it in bulk, like you. So I don't really know. But the short answer is the best thing to do is give them a call or email them and ask them what they think. But it sounds to me like if they're not vacuum sealed, that the plastic seal around it will only last so long. So I would probably jar it. I don't think they're ever going to have the value of tinned tobacco. It's just a way of them presenting it in an easy format. It's not like they don't, sell it in bulk like Dunhill or Peterson or something like that. It's just a way of their tobacco in a way which is more universal. But it's a family operation. It's not a, they do it themselves in house. So they probably don't have a vacuuming machine. So I personally would probably jar it, but you might want to just ask them. I have made pokers before, but I'm not doing one today. I was going to, but I just didn't like the way it was working out on the block. So it's going to be an apple kind of idea. We'll see what it comes out with once I start turning it. It's going to be similar to what I've done before, part rusticated, part smooth. It's got some nice areas of grain and some areas which are not that great, so probably it will be rusticated part, and whichever looks best. The way I've sort of cut the block, I'm hopeful that I'll have a good bird's eye on the top rim, and the shank should have some nice grain as well, and the bowl will be rusticated. That's how I'm thinking it's going to be looking. So it's time for me to move over to the lathe. If you guys want to stay with me, I'll keep it live. Just going to stick some power in so we don't run out of power. I'm a bit nervous about the state of the wind at the moment, I must be honest. What have I done with the Cheers, Lotosaurus. I can't find the thing that knocks out the thing from the headstock. I don't know what I've done with it. I have plenty of family in Israel, loads of family in Israel. I've got some married kids there as well. There it is. Well, it started off as a hobby, and I'm certainly spending quite a bit of time on it, heat piper. It's not my main source of income, but I seem to be spending quite a bit of time making pipes these days. So I use a Forstner bit to get a straight edge. If you want to ask any questions while I'm doing it, feel free. I'm just going to carry on working. I'm kind of just letting this go live as I'm working, so I will be happy to talk if you want to talk. Otherwise, I'm just going to get on with it. It's kind of just an opportunity for people to see how I make my pipes. Yeah, that's how it starts, geek. The workshop is at the back of my garden, so I can work any hours that I want and it doesn't disturb anybody, which is pretty cool. I'm going to use a countersink just to give it a little bit of a countersink to make it easier to put the stem in and out, make it comfortable. This is going to be 9mm, yeah, all my pipes are 9mm. I have plans to move and do non-9mm, but I'm not there yet. I'm still working out what's going to work best for me in terms of tenon sizes and drill sizes and so on. It's got a lovely little countersink there, nice bevel, smoothly done. When buying drill bits, it's always best to buy the best that you can afford. This little thing here, I think it cost me about 25 or 30 pounds. That's like $50. It's expensive, but it pays every single time. Every time you do a countersink, you just feel grateful that you bought the right tools for the job. Okay, so at this stage, I'm going to put the stem in so that we get the right size when we're shaping the shank. So now we take a fairly low grit. Just remind me when I move the, in case I forget, because I've done this more than once, when I finish doing the shank I still have to drill the draft, but the draft is being drilled at a different angle, so I need to, before I start doing the bolt, I need to do the draft, so I just have to remember not to forget that. Might be blocking you a bit here, guys. Not sure if I can put you somewhere else. Just hang on a second. I'll see if I can recite you. So that you can see things a little bit better. There you go. Is that better? You might be a little bit wobbly because you're on a flexible arm, so hopefully you'll still be able to see well enough, but at least I won't be in your way. Let's put this one up here so I can see your messages. I'm going to steadily work through the grits now to get a nice finish. Ouch. That's what you don't want to do. Just catch your finger. I've busted my nails many times doing that. Hopefully we'll start to see the grain a little bit now. Yeah, not bad. Right, so that is the shank pretty much done. We've gone up to 800 grit. Hey Josh. So now I'm going to shift it, drill the draft hole. It's a beautiful circular shank, perfect shank. Hopefully it'll stay that way when I do sanding off the lathe. So now we've got to reshift it and drill the draft hole. Oh dear. Hi Pipeman. No, I've never heard of it, to be honest. Sunday picnic. The Cornell and Deal range is so vast. I've only tried a handful, so no is the short answer. And it's been a bit of a mixed bag with me in terms of Cornell and Deal. Some of them have been okay, and some of them I just don't like. A lot of the way they cut their tobacco, I'm not a fan. It may be just an aesthetic thing, just in terms of the way it looks, but I much prefer the way English tobaccos are made and presented. I like that thick, chunky kind of, even if you rub it out. Oh, I'm turning it the wrong way. Silly boy. It's a flake. Okay, cool. Well, that's different if it's a flake. I do like flakes. So here you can see the two different lines. So that line there is the line of the shank. So that's got to be on the lathe on that line. But when I'm drilling it, I want to make sure there's plenty of briar underneath, so there's no burnout. So I've done it quite high up, and hopefully I'll manage to do that without having an issue at this end. We'll soon find out. Also, you've got to be careful of when you're sighting your block, is you've got to make sure it's square, because they're not always cut absolutely square. So you've just got to eyeball it. Once it's in, you've got to eyeball it and just make sure it's lined up. It's sometimes hard to get it precise, but and you can make little adjustments when you're bending the stem. You can just sort of bend it right and left a little bit if it's slightly off, but obviously you don't want it to be off at all. Well, if you enjoy it, then go for it. Main thing is that you like it. That's pretty perfect. That should drill dead central with a bit of luck. Okay, here we go for the draft hole. you've got to keep drawing it out, because when it shaves off the wood inside, if you don't take it off, it's going to heat up and it's going to sort of force the shank. You could actually fracture the shank if you do it too much, but you just generally have to keep drawing it out to make sure that you're not overheating the inside of the shank. Alright, I drill mine a little bit wider than most people. I drill them at 4mm. And that's even if it wasn't 9mm, but especially with 9mm, it just compensates a little bit of the restriction that the 9mm filters can give sometimes. So it just compensates for it, so I do a slightly wider draft hole. Eight-ounce mason jars. Well, it depends what kind of length of term that you're actually trying to sell it for. If you're buying in bulk, then obviously yes, you need the mason jars. If you're not buying in bulk, if you're buying tins and you're just slowly adding more and more, just leave them in the tins. Unless you're intending to smoke it, I would say if you're intending to smoke it within a year, then yes, jar it, because the air will improve it, especially if it's got a lot of Virginia in it. It's very good to put it in the jar, and then maybe every month, every couple of weeks, just open the jar, shake it about and close it again. Oxygen, it's like wine. Wine improves with air, with oxygen, so does tobacco, in my experience. So if you're going to smoke it within a year or two, then jar it, and just every so often open the jar, give it a shake and close it again. If you want to cellar it and you want it for 5-10 years, leave it in the tin. Don't open the tin. Some people are really careful about it, and they'll put some tape around the seal of the tin as well, just to prevent any air getting in, if you're worried about the seal. But that's my personal experience. I'm not an expert, but just based on my personal experience, is that if you're going to smoke them within the short term, medium term, jar it and give it some airtime, and if you're not going to smoke it in the medium term, then leave it in the tin. If it's come in pouches, then jar it for sure. Right, so the draft hole is done. All it golden sliced this morning. Alright, so next is we're going to spin it on its axis and get the bowl drilled. At this stage, you've drilled it to the best of your ability. Hopefully you've marked it up accurately. At this stage you don't know that you're going to hit things correctly. So now the next stage is where you drill the bowl and you hopefully will meet the draft hole accurately. And I want to leave it as much exposed as possible, but without... See, when you line this up, you've got to keep away from that, because when you're turning it with a turning tool, you can end up chipping that, which you don't want to do. So I use this as my guide. But I want to leave enough exposed so I can start off the apple shape with the turning tool, so that I've got a nice, completely circular rim. The best way of doing that is with a turning tool. You know, there's some really skilled guys out there who can do that with their sanding wheel, and to get a really perfect thing, I don't know. I much prefer to rely on the lathe, which is foolproof really in terms of getting a perfect circle, as long as you've lined things up accurately. So once again, you've got to check that it's as square as you can, because this block is definitely not a square block. Yeah, for sure, Guy. If it's something that you're smoking regularly, definitely buy in bulk. One thing I didn't do is line up the bowl. I'm going to have to take that out. Can't do any guessing games. Sorry about that. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't jump to it, Josh, if you're still new. Just try stuff out, get some samples if you can. I wouldn't, if it's something that you really, really like, don't go mad, because your palate will change. So get maybe 4 ounces, something like that, and take it from there and see how it goes, because the tobacco will change over time as well. So you just got to make sure that you like it. At the same time, I would caution as well, because you never know which company is going to go bust. So if it's something that you like, then by all means, if you have the financial means, then I guess buy as much as you can, which isn't going to affect your pocket, and that you're not going to be too disappointed if you kind of start to not like it as much. That's what I would suggest, generally speaking. Is not to go crazy, but as long as it doesn't affect you financially in an adverse way, then buy as much as you can afford to of something that you like. But in this day and age, you just never know what's around the corner, whether it's to do with regulations or whether it's to do with people going bust. You just never know. So if you find something that you like, sell it. And I do that whenever I go to tobacconists. I don't buy 100 tins. I'll buy a couple of tins every time I go and take it from there. And you just slowly build up your cellar. But my palate is also continuously changing. I've been at this now for about 5 years. Nearly 5 years, and it's just changing all the time. So the only issue I've got is that Orlick I can't get here in the UK. Burley blends. Okay, if you like Burley blends, then good for you. I can't stand them personally, but it's just it's a personal thing. You know, all of it is personal. One thing I've learned to do when I'm drilling, is to start the drill off at a high speed, because what happens is that the circular force of it spinning round pushes the bit to the side. You do it at a high speed and just touch it till it starts the hole. It just keeps it a little bit more accurate. Because I'm applying hardly any pressure, so it's just slowly digging into the briar and starting to make an impression. And then once it's in there, it's got less chance of deviating, but it still is a bit. And then I can slow it right down again. just going to put my mask on, bear with me. Sounds like we hit it just now. You do get a change in pitch of the lathe when you cut through. There we go. Take it a bit further. Looking good. Take it down and drop more. There we go. We're good to go on that front. So now all I want to do is start off the top of the apple shape. So the first thing I'm going to do is cut a straight edge because it's all wonky, the top rim. First we've got to get a round circle, so we're not quite there yet, still got a straight edge there. A little bit more to go. Got a little bit of plateau still there, it was a bit of a deeper bit, so I'm going to take that down a bit more. And we haven't got a very good straight edge either. That's better. I've trained myself to be ambidextrous with a tool. I'm right-handed and I can do nothing else with my left hand, but I've forced myself to learn because I want to keep my hands away from this area when I'm turning. So I can actually turn with my left hand. It's the only thing I can do with my left hand, but I've kind of really forced myself to do it so that I can stay safe. Okay, and we're back to sanding. Cheers, pipe man. Give me a second, Josh. Just need to concentrate, otherwise I'll take my fingers off. Okay, I think this is ready to come off the lathe. Now, to answer your question, Josh, you could try and put a Boveda pack in there. I don't find that it works. It works with cigars, but I don't find personally that it works with tobacco. Maybe over a very long period of time. I might be wrong, it's just my personal experience. And what I do, if I want to rehydrate something, if it's literally from the 70s, and it's not been in an airtight container in the last 50 years, I think you're going to struggle, to be perfectly honest with you. If it's been in any type of container, even if it's not airtight, then it wouldn't be the end of the world. But what I do is, if it's a lot of tobacco and it needs rehydrating, is I'll lay it out on a table, on a paper towel or something like that. I'll take another paper towel and I will damp it just a little bit, not wet, not soaking wet, just a little bit of like even a mist. If you've got a mist gun, one of those kind of mist bottles where you can spray, you can either just spray a mist of water over the tobacco directly, but really just a bit, put it back in the jar, and that will sort of, you don't need to cover the whole thing in water. It'll just, you need a little bit in there, put it back in the jar, and that humidity will spread in the jar. But I generally, rather than putting direct moisture on there, which I don't like to do, is I'll just moisten a paper towel, lay it on top of the tobacco for about 10 minutes, then take it out and put it in the jar, and usually that's fine. the other alternative is if it's not completely crispy dry, so that when you pick it up and you do that, it turns to dust. If it does that, I don't know if you're going to be able to save it. It depends. Some tobaccos, yes. It depends if it's already sort of crumbly to nothing. You did it with the Boveda pack guy? How long did it take? And it depends how dry it was as well. But if it works, all well and good. I personally haven't had that experience, but I'm very happy to hear that it works. Definitely try that. I mean, there's no harm in doing that. You did it with a spray, right? Okay. So I prefer not to spray directly onto the tobacco, but onto something else and then lay it on top. Another thing you can do is, just if you haven't got a huge amount of tobacco, if it's just a small amount on your filling your bowl, which I talked about last night in the live, is just pack your bowl and then just cup the bowl like that and breathe. Just go like that with warm air from your mouth. That will soften that tobacco up really very, very quickly. So you just do that kind of thing, cup the bowl and just breathe some warm air onto it 2 or 3 times. You'll be amazed how much it softens up. But it depends. If it's a tobacco which has been out for a week or 2 and it's dry, that will definitely work. But if it's been 50 years, I don't know. You've got to trial and error, really. Okay, so this is where we're at. Let me just turn this light off so you can see a little bit of the grain there. I'm not sure how much of the grain I'm going to show on the bowl. Depends how it looks on the other side. And there's the shank. You can see some nice grain on the shank as well. So we shall see. As I said, the intention is to rusticate the bowl, but we'll see. It's to keep the top smooth and rusticate the bowl. Got a bit of a shaping issue here, but we'll see how that goes when we sand. But rustication should be okay with that. So there we go. So I'm going to pause it there, guys, and perhaps I'll go live again shortly when I continue. Thanks very much, everybody, for joining. Thanks, Guy. Shalom, shalom. Hi, Rocking Steady. Sorry you've caught the tail end of it. Thanks, Josh, Pipe Man, and whoever else joined. I will catch you soon. Thanks very much. All the best.